3 years ago, the accident shattered my life in ways I never could have imagined. It stole my legs, my independence, and for a while, it nearly stole my will to live. But, in a twist of fate I couldn't have prepared for, it also gave me him, the one thing I didn't know I needed. First, before anything else, I owe a debt of gratitude to my incredible subscribers. Your unwavering support is what keeps me going, what allows me to share stories that dig into the messy, raw, and sometimes brutal corners of life. This one is complicated. But I'm asking you to stay with me, to hold on. The doctor told me I was lucky. Lucky the semi-truck didn't crush me entirely. Lucky that my spine wasn't severed on impact. Lucky my son Jace wasn't with me that night, sitting beside me in the passenger seat, oblivious to the horror that was coming. Lucky. That word still stings like a slap across the face. Funny thing, luck. When you're a woman who can't even make it across the room without feeling the excruciating burn in her legs, without her muscles screaming in protest at every step. But I guess luck is relative. Our little house in Ohio, the one that used to feel too big when Jace was at school, now feels far too small. His presence fills every room, every corner of the house that once echoed with silence. He's everywhere. In the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner like a man twice his age. Adjusting my pillows when the pain becomes unbearable. Gently lifting me into the shower when my body refuses to cooperate. When my muscles betray me and collapse beneath me. He's my strength now. My boy, no, my man. It's a strange thing to look at your child and realize they've grown into someone else. Someone unrecognizable in the best way possible. When you have a kid at 16, they're your baby, your responsibility. You never think about the day they'll grow up, about the moment when they'll no longer need you the way they once did. But it happens. One day they're still your child, but they stand taller, broader, stronger. Jace was always tall, but now at 19 he's massive. His frame built from hard labor, from the work he does with his hands every day. His palms are calloused and rough. His voice deep and steady, with a gravelly edge that's all man. But his eyes, those eyes, are the same as his father's, the one who walked away the second the pregnancy test turned pink. His eyes, the only part of him that's ever belonged to the man who abandoned us, still haunt me. And yet, in those eyes I see strength. Strength I never knew I could find, and certainly never expected to find in the boy who once clung to me like a lifeline. "Mom, I jump," Jay says, standing in the doorway, a bowl of soup in his hands. His voice is soft, like he's bracing himself for something, but his eyes never leave mine. They hold a quiet intensity, as if he's watching for any flicker of reaction, any sign of emotion. I look up at him, the weight of exhaustion pulling at my bones. "You didn't eat lunch," I murmur, my voice hoarse. "I wasn't hungry," he replies, his tone steady, but there's something else beneath it. A trace of worry, maybe, or something that feels like concern wrapped in layers of habit. "You never are," I say, the words coming out sharper than I intend. It's true though. Jay's appetite has become as unpredictable as everything else in this house. As unpredictable as me. He sets the bowl of soup gently on my nightstand, but his frown deepens. "Your legs spasm today," he says, like it's a question he already knows the answer to, but he asks anyway. I don't respond right away. What's the point? He knows. He always knows without me having to say a word. The way his gaze lingers on me, the way he watches my every move. I try to ignore the tension crawling up my spine as he sits down beside me on the bed. He's careful, not wanting to disturb the fragile space between us. He reaches down and starts rolling up my sweatpants, his fingers brushing my skin. My breath hitches, a sharp intake of air I can't control. The sight of my legs still catches me off guard sometimes. The scars, the twisted patches of skin that tell stories of surgeries, of attempts to fix what can't be fixed. Jagged lines, angry remnants of what was and will never be again. My pulse quickens, and I try to swallow the lump in my throat. Jay's fingers hover just above my skin. His touch hesitant but familiar. "Can I?" he asks softly, the question almost too careful. He's not just asking permission. He's trying to respect boundaries that we both know are becoming harder to define. I nod, my throat tight. His first touch is clinical, methodical, like he's done it 1,000 times, like it's nothing more than a simple act of care. He kneads the stiff muscles around my knee, and for a brief moment the pain seems to fade. It's not gone, but it dulls. The relief feels so foreign, so strange. But then his thumb finds a knot deep near my inner thigh, and I feel it like a shockwave, the pain mixing with something else. Something hotter, something I don't have a name for. I bite my lip to hold it back. "You're tense," he murmurs, his voice low, barely a whisper, but it feels like it's echoing in my chest. "You have no idea," I reply, my voice cracking. He doesn't, not really. How could he? How could anyone understand the weight of this new version of me? The woman I am now, broken and rebuilt, but still aching in places that no one can see. His hands move higher, just enough to be unsettling but not enough to cross some invisible line. His touch is both tender and invasive, gentle but forceful in a way that sends a jolt through me. It's just his skin against mine, I tell myself. Just the heat of his hands working out the tension, the relief of the pain melting away. But then his fingertips brush the edge of my shorts, and everything stops. My breath catches, so sudden that I'm afraid I'll suffocate on it. Day stops too. For one heartbeat too. It's as if we've both forgotten how to move. Neither of us breathes, neither of us dares to shift, as though we both know that this moment, this fragile, almost impossible moment, is something that could shatter everything. And for a second I feel a strange tension in the air between us. A current, raw and electric, and I know that it's not just the physical relief I'm feeling. Then, as if breaking a spell, Jay clears his throat, his hands jerking back like he's burned. He pulls my pant leg back down, smoothing it as if nothing had happened. "Better?" he asks, his voice trying to sound casual, but there's a tremor beneath it. "No," I whisper, but the truth is, yes. Yes, it is better. Little. Maybe more than a little. Yes. "Thanks, baby," I add, my words thick with emotion, though I can't quite place what's swirling in me. He hesitates, like he wants to say something, but the words never come. Instead, he takes the soup bowl in his hand and leaves, his footsteps retreating down the hall. I sit there, my eyes unfocused on the ceiling, replaying those few moments when his touch almost slipped too far. The way his fingers lingered, the way I froze, the way he did too. For the first time in years I feel something other than pain, something dangerous, something that could unravel us both if we let it. The second time he touched me, I knew without a doubt that it wasn't just about my legs anymore. The early morning light poured through the curtains, harsh and too bright, as if it were mocking the storm that was brewing inside my head. The room, washed in pale gold, felt like it belonged to someone else. Someone who wasn't trapped in a body that ached, someone who wasn't carrying a weight too heavy to even speak of. I hadn't slept. Every time I closed my eyes, the memory of Jace's hands would come rushing back. His fingers, warm and calloused, lingering on my skin in ways that made my breath catch. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, just a son helping his mother, caretaker easing pain. But the truth was that it wasn't just his hands that I remembered. It was the heat that had rushed through me, the way his touch burned in places that had never felt like this before. That wasn't pain. No, it wasn't pain at all. The soft creak of his door down the hall snapped me back to reality, pulling me out of my spiraling thoughts. I quickly adjusted the blanket over my lap, as if that simple gesture could hide the fire that had ignited beneath my skin, as if he could somehow see the war that raged inside my chest. I held my breath as footsteps approached, and then his shadow filled my doorway, dark and familiar. "You're up early," he said, his voice still thick with sleep, rough and warm in a way that only a half-awake son could sound. I didn't look up at him, not yet. Couldn't. He stood in the doorway, shirtless, the soft lines of his muscles still visible from the haze of sleep, sweatpants hanging low on his hips. A tattoo, something he'd gotten last year without asking me, curled over his ribs, an inked symbol of rebellion, of independence. I forced my eyes away from the dangerous pull of his presence. Couldn't sleep, I murmured, my voice shaky, hoarse from the lack of rest. Lex again. His voice, though still edged with sleep, carried an undertone of concern, of familiarity, like we'd both gotten too used to the cycle of worry. No, I said, my voice quiet but steady. You. I nodded toward him, willing him to understand without explaining. Jay sighed, a soft sound that barely escaped his chest. Then he walked in like he had the night before, sitting down beside me. The air between us was charged with something unspoken, something heavy. Without asking, without a single word of permission, he gently pulled the blanket back from my legs, exposing my bare calf. His hands, warm and firm, rested against my skin. The simple act made me flinch, as if his touch had awakened something inside me I couldn't quite control. Sorry, he muttered, and his voice was thick with apology, with a quiet regret. Cold hands. But I knew it wasn't the temperature that made me tense. It wasn't the chill that had startled me. It was the way his fingers pressed into my skin, the deliberate slowness of his touch, like he was trying to memorize the shape of me. My muscles stiffened at his touch, a deep tension settling where his fingers traced. You're tight everywhere, he murmured, his voice low and intimate in a way that made my chest tighten. I swallowed hard, the sensation thick in my throat. I couldn't speak, couldn't find the words that would make this right. Last night, I could almost pretend it had been an accident, a simple, unintentional brushing of hands. But now, with the morning light spilling in, I couldn't ignore the truth. I couldn't pretend that his thumb wasn't circling higher, moving slowly and carefully as if he were mapping out my body, learning it in ways I wasn't ready for. And I couldn't ignore the way his palm slid up the back of my thigh, the heat from his touch spreading like wildfire, leaving me breathless and aching for reasons I didn't understand. Jace, I said, the word coming out in a whisper, a plea, a warning. It was the only thing I could think to say. It was the only thing I could say, even as my heart thundered in my chest, even as every nerve screamed for me to do something, anything, to stop him. Relax, he murmured, his voice richer, lower, thick with something unspoken, something I could barely name. There was an edge to it, a resonance that seemed to vibrate through my bones. You're fighting it. But I wasn't resisting the massage, not in the way he meant. No, I was battling something much deeper, far more dangerous. I was fighting the way my body responded to him, this involuntary, traitorous reaction that stirred in me each time his fingertips brushed just too close to the edge of my shorts, each time I felt the heat of his touch searing through the fabric of my clothes. My breath caught painfully in my chest whenever I felt his gaze linger on me. Eyes intense, dark, like a man's would look at a woman, not the way a son looks at his mother. That look sent a flood of warmth and panic through me, leaving me both aching and terrified. My heart pounded in my ears as a chill raced down my spine, and I realized that what I was feeling wasn't just desire. It was something far more dangerous, something forbidden. Then, the abrupt knock at the front door shattered the delicate tension that had been building between us. Jace pulled away so suddenly, his body going stiff, his expression hardening as though the touch had seared him too. He stood, his muscles rippling beneath his shirt, stretching, a silent battle of control waging beneath the surface. You expecting someone? He asked, his voice not quite as steady as it usually was. No, I replied, though my voice trembled slightly, betraying the disquiet I felt inside. Without waiting for a response, he moved toward the door. I watched him go, each step a painful reminder of how much I wished he'd stay. The door creaked open, and I could hear the familiar shrill voice of Mrs. Callaway, our nosy neighbor, drifting in from the living room. Her innocent question about whether we needed anything from the store, followed by Jason's polite but distant refusal, seemed like a million miles away, a mere distraction from the storm raging inside me. The door closed again, and I heard Jace's footsteps returning, though his presence now seemed distant, shrouded in something I couldn't quite grasp. When he entered, his face was unreadable, a mask of cool indifference. Think she suspects? He asked, his voice steady but with a hint of something I couldn't place. For a second, my heart stopped beating altogether. The air thickened, and everything inside me went still, frozen in a moment of fear I couldn't escape. "Suspects what?" I stammered, my voice barely a whisper, panic tightening in my chest. Jace smirked, the corners of his lips curling in that familiar teasing way that made my stomach flutter despite the rising tension. "That we never paid her back for the casserole dish she brought last month," he said, his tone laced with an unsettling calmness. I forced a laugh, a hollow sound that didn't reach my eyes. My hands shook uncontrollably in my lap, the trembling so intense I thought they might give me away. For just a heartbeat I had feared. No, I had known he meant us. Us in that moment. The forbidden connection that had passed between us. But that fear was fleeting, smothered by his casual tone, though my pulse still raced with the memory of it. Outside, the storm continued its furious assault. Rain battered the windows like 1,000 tiny fists. The power flickered and then died, plunging the house into a thick, consuming darkness. The sudden quiet was deafening, broken only by the sound of the wind tearing through the trees outside. Jace moved quickly, lighting candles, their flickering glow casting shadows that danced across his face, making him look like something both familiar and strange. He sat beside me on the couch, so close that I could feel the heat radiating from his body, an almost tangible presence that made my skin hum with awareness. "You cold?" he asked softly, his voice like a caress, though his eyes were unreadable, distant, as if they were veiling something I couldn't see. "No," I lied, the words slipping out in a breathless whisper, though my body screamed in protest. I could feel the cold air seeping through my clothes, but it wasn't the chill I feared. Without another word, he draped a blanket over both of us, the soft fabric settling around us, drawing us closer than before. Our legs brushed beneath it, the touch so innocent, yet the intensity of it made the air between us crackle. Neither of us moved away. Neither of us said a word. The world outside roared and howled, but in that small space, there was nothing but the strange, suffocating stillness of us. Then his hand found mine. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't some fleeting, casual touch. No, this was deliberate. His fingers slipping between mine, firm and certain, as though they belonged there. As though he had been waiting for this moment as much as I had. My breath hitched in my chest, 1,000 warning bells ringing in my mind, but my body remained still, frozen by the sheer force of the connection between us. I should have pulled away, should have broken the contact, but I didn't. Couldn't. In the candlelight, his eyes were dark, fathomless. They held 1,000 unsaid words, longing, uncertainty, need, and I saw in them something that made my heart ache, something that made my pulse race with fear and want all at once. His gaze was a question, a warning, plea. Suddenly, the electricity surged back to life, the hum of the power cutting through the silence. The light flooded the room, harsh and blinding. In an instant, we jerked apart, as though the very act of touching had burned us. But even as the space between us grew, the electric current still thrummed between us, undeniable and potent. One kiss. That's all it took to unravel everything, to shatter the fragile boundaries between us and remake us into something we weren't supposed to be. That one kiss changed everything. For days after that night, Jason and I moved around each other like strangers. Polite, careful, hungry. But underneath, something had shifted, something irrevocable. We both knew it. Neither of us could escape it. Not anymore. I couldn't help but notice the way his gaze lingered on my mouth when I spoke, like he couldn't tear his eyes away, as if every word I uttered was an invitation to something I couldn't fully comprehend. His hands, always so sure, hovered just a moment too long when he helped me stand. His touch deliberate, as if he were savoring the feel of me in his grasp. I found myself holding my breath, every nerve in my body alert, acutely aware of the electric charge between us, as if the air itself crackled with tension. Once I turned too quickly, my body in a frantic rush to move, and in that instant, I caught him inhaling the scent of my hair where it had brushed his shoulder. The simple, innocent act sent a shiver down my spine. It was as if the very atmosphere around us had thickened, every interaction heavy with unspoken words, with a desire neither of us dared to voice. We were a lit fuse, and the moment it ignited, It would burn everything down in its wake. And it did. It happened on a Tuesday, as ordinary as any other, and yet everything in that moment felt anything but. Jace had just come home from work, his presence filling the room before he even said a word. His body carried the scent of summer heat, of sweat soaked into his shirt, the sharp, intoxicating scent of a man who had been laboring under the sun all day. He kicked off his boots with a heavy thud, his white t-shirt clinging to his chest, the damp fabric highlighting the strength of his muscles, and I could feel my pulse quicken just watching him, the sight so painfully ordinary and yet somehow not. "You okay?" he asked, his voice soft, but the concern there was undeniable. His eyes flickered over me, taking in the way my posture was stiff, the way I was trying to suppress the discomfort I felt. I tried to offer him a smile, but it felt strained, forced, as if I was holding something back. "Just sore," I replied, though the words barely left my lips before I felt the weight of them. "Long day." His question was casual, but I could hear the edge of something deeper beneath it, something that made my chest tighten. Without waiting for an answer, he moved toward me, the sound of his boots heavy against the floor. I didn't resist as he gently lifted my legs onto his lap, the warmth of his hands a contrast to the cool air in the room. A soft gasp escaped me as his fingers dug into the tight muscle of my calf, working at the tension I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. His touch was firm, knowing, as though he'd done this 100 times before, though this time there was something more to it. Something that made my breath hitch in my throat. "You work too hard," he muttered under his breath, his voice rough with a mixture of concern and something else, something darker. I let out a soft laugh, a small sound that didn't carry the lightness I intended. Says the boy who rebuilt our porch ramp alone when the insurance refused to cover it. The man who carried me upstairs every night because my bedroom was on the second floor. The words were meant to be a joke, a light-hearted reminder of how much he did for me, but as soon as they left my lips, I realized how true they were. How much he had done, how much he always did for me. His thumb pressed deeper into the knot near my knee, the pressure just shy of painful, and I bit my lip, trying to suppress the moan that threatened to escape. His touch was like fire, both soothing and scorching all at once. "Sure," he whispered, his voice low and rough, as though he were trying to calm me, though there was something in the way he said it that made my pulse spike. "Just let me take care of you." But this wasn't care. It wasn't just concern or comfort. This was something else. This was want. I could see it in the way his jaw clenched, the muscles tightening in his face when my skirt shifted, riding up my thigh. I could feel it in the tremor of his fingers as they slid higher, inching closer to the very center of me. My breath faltered, my body frozen in anticipation, caught between wanting to pull away and wanting to lean into it, to let myself drown in the heat of it all. And then, when his hand reached my thigh, my body reacted before my mind had time to process. I grabbed his wrist, my fingers closing around his skin, the contact sparking a jolt of awareness, of need. We froze in that moment, suspended in the intensity of it, and I could feel his pulse hammering under my fingers, frantic, wild. It was as if the world had narrowed down to just that single charged touch, the space between us charged with everything we had yet to admit, everything we had tried to bury. "Then tell me to stop," he said, his voice thick with a challenge, but there was a desperate undertone beneath it, a silent plea, as though he was daring me to stop him while secretly hoping I wouldn't. I should have said it. I should have shoved him away, demanded that we both get help, that I call a therapist and do anything, everything to erase the heat of the moment. I should have turned away, tried to forget that this was happening, that we were here, caught in something neither of us could untangle. But I didn't. Couldn't. Not when my body was betraying me, responding to him with an intensity one had no words for, a pull I couldn't resist. So I let go of his wrist, and the space between us disappeared in an instant. His kiss wasn't gentle. It wasn't soft or hesitant. It was fire, raw, fierce, igniting everything within me, and teeth sharp and desperate, the kind of kiss that makes your heart race and your soul ache for something it knows it shouldn't want. 19 years of pent-up hunger spilled out in that single, bruising kiss. His hands fisted in my hair, yanking me toward him with a kind of frantic urgency, as though he was trying to pull me into him, to make me part of him. Our mouths collided, desperate and untamed, like this was the only way we knew how to breathe. Each breath I took was a struggle, a fight between surrender and restraint, and I found myself gasping into him, my fingers digging into his shoulders, trying to hold on to something, anything, before the world around us fell apart. "We can't," I whispered against his lips, the words barely a breath, full of doubt, full of terror. "We already are," he growled, his voice low and rough, and I felt it in my bones, the truth of his words. We had already crossed a line we could never uncross, and neither of us could stop it. His teeth grazed my lower lip, a sharp nip that sent a shock of pleasure and pain straight between my legs, my body jolting in response. "You feel that?" he murmured, his lips hot and insistent against my skin. "That's us." And God help me, I did feel it. The hard press of him against my hip, the unmistakable evidence of his desire, his need. My body arched toward him like a flower reaching for the sun, helpless, eager, unable to resist the pull. This was wrong. So wrong. But when his tongue slid against mine, so sure, so relentless, all I could think of was more. More. We didn't make it to the bedroom. There was no time, no space between us. Jace pinned me to the couch, his hips grinding down against me with a ferocity that left me breathless. My hands were frantic, clawing at his shirt, desperate to feel the heat of his skin against mine. The fabric tore at the collar with a sound that echoed in the air, but neither of us cared, not when we were lost in the chaos of each other, not when nothing else mattered but this moment. "Look at me," he growled, his voice a dark command. When I finally met his eyes, what I saw shattered me. It wasn't just lust there, not just the fiery desire of a man wanting a woman. No, it was love, raw and untamed, the kind of love that breaks bones, the kind that leaves scars. His eyes were burning with something deeper, something that reached into me, something that made me ache in ways I hadn't known I could. This wasn't just a mistake, and it wasn't just passion. This was something else entirely, something that could ruin us both. Afterward, we lay tangled in silence, our bodies a mess of limbs, sweat, and the heavy scent of us. The world outside seemed so far away, as if we were cocooned in a moment that had no beginning or end. But reality, like it always does, crept in, crawling under my skin, making the weight of what we'd done press down on me like a physical thing, heavy and suffocating. Jace traced lazy circles on my bare shoulder, his touch gentle now, but it didn't erase the sharp, jagged ache in my chest. "You okay?" His voice was soft, the concern still there, though I knew it wasn't the same concern I had once known from him. It was different now, complicated. I hesitated, my heart beating wildly in my chest, trying to make sense of everything that had just happened. "No," I whispered, the truth spilling out without warning. I was broken, a million pieces of me scattered and trying to find their way back together. "Yes," I said quickly after, the lie tasting bitter on my tongue, but I couldn't face him with the truth. Not yet. He knew I was lying, just as I knew he wasn't sorry. He wasn't sorry for any of it. When he finally spoke again, his voice was so quiet I almost missed it, like it was a secret only meant for me. "I've wanted you since I was 15. My stomach dropped, and the room felt like it was spinning. The words hit me harder than I expected, harder than anything I had prepared myself for. That meant this wasn't an accident. This wasn't some fleeting mistake we could chalk up to a momentary lapse in judgment. No, this was an inevitability, a slow burn that had been building for years. And I realized, with a terrible clarity, that we were never going to be able to walk away from it. We were already caught. Some silences are louder than words. Morning came, too bright, too sharp, like a knife cutting through the haze of the night. I woke before Jace, the weight of what we'd done pressing down on me, suffocating me. The sheets still smelled like him, like sweat, sawdust, and something unmistakably male, a reminder of the night we couldn't undo. The bed felt too big without him, too empty in the cold light of day. And I realized then that nothing, not even the passage of time, could ever erase what we had just done. My son, my lover. God, what had we done? He found me in the kitchen, staring blankly at the coffee maker. "Hey," he murmured, his voice rough with sleep. I couldn't look at him. Couldn't bear to see the tenderness in his eyes. The tenderness that should never have been there. "Mom." Hand on my shoulder, warm, familiar, wrong. Flinched away. The hurt that flashed across his face cut deeper than any knife. We spent the day orbiting each other like distant planets, him trying to catch my eye. His fingers brushing mine every time he passed me something. Me pulling away, building walls with every quiet "thank you" and "please pass the salt." By dinner, the tension was thick enough to choke on. "You're punishing me," he finally said, pushing his plate away. "I'm protecting us." "From what?" "From this." My voice broke. "From the way people would look at us if they knew. From the shame that'll eat us alive if we let this continue." His jaw tightened. "I'm not ashamed. You will be." That night, the house felt too still, too heavy with the weight of everything unsaid. I could hear him, though. His restless movements pacing his room. His every step a quiet thud that reverberated through the thin walls, each creak of the floorboards a reflection of the tension building between us. The rhythmic sound was a haunting melody, a desperate beat that mimicked the frantic pace of my own heart. The hours dragged on, each second stretching longer than the last, until finally silence fell over the house. But it wasn't the kind of silence that brought peace. It was heavy, suffocating, the kind of silence that hinted at something imminent. Then, without warning, the soft click of my door opening echoed in the stillness. There he was, standing in the doorway, framed by the pale moonlight that spilled across the floor in silver streaks, casting long shadows over the room. He was shirtless, his chest rising and falling too fast, too uneven, like he couldn't breathe in the same air that I did. The shadows seemed to dance around him, making him appear even more powerful, more dangerous, as though the world had stopped just for us. He didn't speak at first, just stood there, his gaze piercing through the darkness, and for a moment, I wondered if he could hear the way my heart was pounding in my chest, louder than anything else. "I can't pretend," he said. His voice thick with raw emotion, the words strangled and hoarse, as if it took everything he had just to say them. "Not with you." The admission hung in the air like a heavy weight, and in that moment every part of me, every ounce of willpower I had, crumbled. I couldn't pretend either. I couldn't keep pretending that I wasn't feeling this, that I wasn't aching for him in a way that went far beyond anything I understood. We both knew it, and it terrified me. I wanted to fight it, wanted to push him away, but my body betrayed me, trembling with the longing I could no longer deny. Without another word, he moved toward me, crossing the room in strides that seemed to eat up the distance between us, as though he couldn't wait another second. We didn't need words. Not anymore. Every touch, every glance, every ragged breath we shared spoke volumes, unraveling the walls we'd spent so long trying to build between us. And when his hands found me, when his lips touched mine, it was the moment I knew for sure. This was it. This was our undoing, and there was no turning back. We were falling, headfirst, into something we had no control over, something that would change everything. And for the first time I didn't care. 1 year later, nothing had changed. The neighbors still whispered about us, though they thought they knew nothing of the truth. Mrs. Callaway caught me in the aisle at the grocery store. Her voice sweet and innocent as she commented on how close Jay and I were. "Such a devoted son," she said, her words dripping with pride. "Always taking such good care of his mother." The smile I gave her was tight, polite, a mask I'd perfected. I adjusted the weight of the new wedding band on my left hand, its presence a constant reminder of how we had managed to hide the truth in plain sight. A ring that no one questioned, because who would? Single mothers like me didn't remarry. It wasn't right. Or at least, that's what they'd believe. Jay's fingers curled through mine as we made our way out of the store, and the world continued on, blissfully ignorant, too caught up in their own lives to see what was right in front of them. Nobody looked twice at us. Nobody knew the secret we shared, the bond we carried in the quiet moments, in the stolen glances and whispered touches. And that was exactly how we wanted it. Exactly how we needed it to be. We wwere playing a dangerous game, and no one was ever going to know the rules. To be continued.